So in our gospel this weekend, we hear Jesus continuing kind of his discourse and his, we call it his sermon that he gives to the people from last week. And so, what we hear, like specifically, is what later became known as, and what we all know as, the Golden Rule. You know, or how we hear, treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, and everyone's like, oh yeah, we know that. Well, how many of us do it? You know, I have a thought that if everyone did that, if everyone treated others the way they wanted to be treated, what do you think this world would look like? Yeah, a lot different. Because so often, we just don't do it. We think selfishly. We think, as the people in our gospel, that the examples that Jesus gives us continuously is like where we do something expecting to be repaid back, or we lend someone something expecting that they'll give it to us back. Like we're expecting to be repaid, or to be thanked, or to be glorified. But what Jesus is doing is he's, again, he seems to do this a lot, of just kind of take our expectations and how we would normally think of things, and he's just like, nope, we're just going to do the opposite of that. Deal with it. And when Jesus does this, what he does is the examples that he gives, it's because it seems that he's less concerned about the nature of the action that's done to someone than he is about the actual response that we have. He's less concerned about the action that's done to someone than the response that we're going to do in response to that. It's like, why doesn't Jesus care that I've been hurt or that I've been wronged? It's like, well, how are you going to respond to that? If someone punches you, are you going to punch them back? Or if someone punches you, are you going to turn and offer them your other cheek and still love that person? Which one's harder? If someone throws a right, anyone can counter with another left. But if someone comes at you with a right hook, only saints actually offer their left cheek and still love the other person and forgive the other person that did them harm. That's not something easy to do. But what Jesus continuously does to us is he calls us and asks and, quite honestly demands that we do the opposite of what society would expect us to do, and to do the opposite of what our nature would want us to do. Jesus wants love to be our nature. He wants love to be our natural response to things. It seems that Christ oftentimes asks the impossible of us, or asks what's difficult of us. But if it was easy to do these things, if it was easy to live the lives of sainthood and to strive to become a saint, everyone would do it, and there would just be no need for Mass or for church or even for Christ if everyone was a walking saint. He wouldn't have had to come and do any of that if everyone was just perfect all the time. But we're not. And so he gave us himself, and he gives us this model to follow, to strive after, so that we can actually make a difference in our lives and make a difference in the lives of others. Sin is actually pretty contagious. How often have we been in a group setting of people, or just with one other person, where all of a sudden, I'm going to use gossip as an example because that's, a pretty easy one. So you're with some people, and all of a sudden people just start gossiping, right? And then it's like, oh, did you see Father's hair? He thinks he has great hair. We all know he does, but hair's always on point. It's like, have you seen Father's hair? He's like, oh my gosh, like blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's just his hair, blah, blah, blah. And it just becomes this downward spiral. Because when one person does it, in the midst of another person, it becomes very easy just to continue in that. And next thing you know, How did we get here? Here's what it looks like. It's not going to stop until something stops it. There needs to be a wedge that needs to be put in the midst of it. I'll open that later. There needs to be a wedge that is put in, it's inserted into those conversations and into those situations. Now, okay, here it is. Oh, did you see Father's hair? He's like, oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh yeah, whatever, He doesn't have a lot in his life. Maybe his hair is the only thing he can care about. What those wedges can be is when we're in the midst of sin, and when we're in the midst of negativity, when we're in the midst of people acting like enemies or hating others or cursing others or mistreating others, as we hear in our gospel, what can we do? How can we combat that? But by loving others, doing good to others, blessing others, praying for others. It's like when we have something that's falling and it can't be stopped unless there's a wedge that's driven into the middle of the situation. Love, mercy, being good, blessing, and praying for others. That can be the wedge so easily put in the middle of those conversations and situations. And what it actually does is it's going to steer the conversation in a completely different direction. Because as soon as negativity and sin becomes present in our lives, and all of a sudden when someone says something complimentary to someone, or says something positive or something of virtue, Jesus takes over. And next thing you know, now we're talking about good things of people. We're speaking well of others. We're blessing others. We're doing good to them. We're praying for them. We're loving them as Christ called us to do. That's what Jesus can do. And that's what we can so easily do, is if we just insert love and virtues into the midst of situations. It's so easy. Like all I had to do was put my foot there. And that's all we need to do with our words and with our actions. My brothers and sisters, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond to these things? Because Christ is calling us to live these lives, to make a difference in other people's lives. As we said with that golden rule, to treating others the way you would want to be treated, if everyone had that in the back of their mind, and if everyone started doing that, who knows what this world could look like? And imagine if an entire parish community, St. Patrick's in Clear Lake, for example, started doing this. Look what would happen to Clear Lake. Look what could happen to Saragordo County. Look what could happen to Northeast Iowa. And then look what could happen to Iowa. It needs to start somewhere. Why can't it start here?